Hey, it's Seagrove, and today we're looking at some of the best decks for the upcoming format. These are some of the decks I suggest playing. The first is Gardevoir. This is just my Gardevoir list. There are plenty online that are really good. So very easy to find different ideas for how you want to build it. This is the best deck in format. It is alone in the top tier. So I really suggest it if you can afford it. The problem is it's around $300 to build if you don't have, obviously, the staples, the Lele's, etc. The deck is so good because it synergizes with itself and it has decent matchups against its counters. So even against things like Metagross and Solgaleo, I would say it has 40-60 against those. It can lose, obviously, their counters, but it sets up a little bit more consistently with Diancie, and if they just whiff one turn, the matchup becomes at least 50-50 as long as you are still building up. So the reason it has 40-60s against these decks is because they're stage 2 decks and they're not perfectly consistent. Of course, Gardevoir has the same issues, but Diancie can mitigate that a little bit. So the other two big counters, I would say, would be Vikavolt and Necrozma Garb Coco. Both of those can do spread damage and then start taking one-shots. So if you are worried about those two, I don't know how common those are in a lot of places, but they are, especially Vikavolt, can be countered easily by a Mr. Mime. So if you know that that's going to be present, or that just becomes a larger part of the meta, I definitely suggest playing one Mr. Mime in your list. So the second deck I wanted to look at is Necrozma Garb Coco. So this is my favorite deck in the new standard format. I played it. I invented this list. I invented the deck. Of course, other people invented it as well. I was playing it in a 60-card tournament series, and I was doing pretty well with it. And then it showed up at Worlds, and so that was pretty cool to see the same ideas, even if the list were probably 10 or 15 cards off. It's the same idea. So my list from the 60 cards tournament series did well. It got me to top 4 out of, I don't know, probably around 60 players. And then my testing partner liked my idea and changed a few cards, and he's also in top 4. He hasn't played his match yet. So really good deck. The problem with this deck is it can have issues again with the simple Mr. Mime tech, and once the Lele promo comes out, this will be even a better deck, so people will begin to tech against it. The other problem is a really good player can somewhat shut it down by staggering their bench placements, but very few people understand those concepts, so you don't really have to worry about that too much unless you're playing against a very strong player. Really fun, but hard to pilot and can be countered by really good players. So that's our second deck. The third deck I want to look at was Ninetails. Ninetails is a strong deck, very consistent, and it has an advantage where Necrozma does the same thing. It discards energies when it attacks. It gets harder for Gardevoir to KO it, but Gardevoir, of course, can pull it off without too much trouble. Again, this is my Ninetails list. That was my Necrozma Garb list. My lists tend to be a little bit weird. I'm playing some energy removal in this one, but you can find these lists anywhere online that you want. This is another good consideration. One last thing about this, the baby Ninetails is really good against certain decks that, especially if people aren't building their decks properly with another attacker, you are in trouble. This can cause a lot of trouble for them. So again, Ninetails, really great deck. The next deck I wanted to look at is, I have a troll deck here. I'll show that at the end. This is my current Solgaleo list. It's also still under construction. I'm down to about 3 or 4 cards that I'm not sure on. This deck is very good. It beats Gardevoir, but again, Gardevoir can beat it. I think I'm 3-1 against Gardevoir with this list, but this is a very strong deck. It has a much better place in the meta. It has trouble with fire decks, obviously, but I think almost 50-50, maybe 40-60 or 35-65 against fire decks. And the reason is because of Soul Burst. You can bring up Solgaleo and then Soul Burst like a couple DCE onto a Lele, or metal onto this Solgaleo, or what you will be turning into this Solgaleo. And then you can start taking KOs with things like Lele. Your board isn't established, you can turn the game that way. So it's a really, really fun deck. It's a really good deck. I think it's well positioned in the meta. So definitely something to consider if the Salazzle Ho hype goes off or wears off like I'm expecting it to. So that was the fourth deck I wanted to show you. The fifth deck is Vikavolt, and then I'll show you my silly rogue deck at the end. So this is Vikavolt, and Vikavolt Bulu, obviously. Bulu's super, super, super strong. Just cards that can do versatile amounts of damage, like Gardevoir, like Bulu, are just really, really, really strong. So definitely something to consider. It can discard all the energies attached to it, like Necrozma, which helps against Gardevoir. If they're not playing Mr. Mime, I would say it's favorable against Gardevoir, because you can spread twice with Coco, or even just once, and then a choice-banded Bulu can one-shot Gardevoir. So again, I really like this deck. I think it's tier 2. I think Necrozma Coco is tier 2. And then I think Ninetails and Solgaleo are tier 3. The Golisopod deck I'm not a fan of. A lot of people are, and you can find some good lists around for that. This is based off of John Roberts' list. And some of these are changes that he suggested, and then a couple are my own. So that's another list. The last thing I'm going to show you, well, not the last thing, but the last standard deck I'm going to show you is Darkrai. Oh, no, that's expanded, sorry. Is Sleepy Baby's Darkrai. This deck is just, if you want to have some fun, it's really, really fun. You're playing the 4 of the Darkrai EX, but you're using the second attack, which does 160 if they're asleep. Then with the choice band, that's 190. And then you play 1 of the Darkrai GX for the dead end. You can use Hypno to put them to sleep, and then you play Chaos Tower to stay awake yourself. And then you can use Dead End or Dark Head for pretty easy KOs against most stuff. Gardevoir is obviously troublesome. Playing Max Elixir. Oh, this is pre-rotation. I forgot to take out the VS Seekers. But yeah, it's a silly idea. You can play around with it. I haven't touched it since rotation because it's not super competitive. The expanded, I don't want to touch on the big 3 or the big 4. I would say Night March, Darkrai, Trevenant, and Mega Ray. We're going to see if anything fun comes out of this expanded tournament. But one deck I do want to touch on is Lapras. Lapras is similar to Darkrai, but it can hit it more consistently, hits higher numbers early, and then less consistently hits higher numbers late. So, or it doesn't hit the high numbers that Darkrai hits, is what I should say. So this is my list. I really like it because it easily fits a Toad and a Karen, so it beats Night March and Bees that way. It I play this Kyurem, which can take two KOs at the same time against either Marshadow if Night March is playing the Focus Sash, and then you hit it with Lapras and it lives, then you can take out a Joltik and the thing with Kyurem. And you can just play it down and easily accelerate with Aqua Patch and Max Elixir. And it plays a Sudowoodo to beat the Mega Ray matchup. So, and then against Darkrai, you're going to hopefully go first and play Getsis. But you can OHKO things with Lapras pretty easily, but you want to get the Getsis because it's just so item dependent. I've won auto losses against Darkrai just by going first and playing Getsis in Game 1 and Game 3. And they just didn't draw cards. So it has counters to the big 3 decks. Obviously, the Darkrai is going to be not the best counter there, but because it depends on you going first. But this is a fun list, and it's pretty strong. I'm not playing the Blastoise version, obviously, because I wanted to fit some of this other weird stuff in. So that's an expanded play to consider. And that's about it. So those are the decks that I would play, other than, of course, and expanded the ones I mentioned. These are some of the decks I'm considering, and these are my lists. I'm not holding anything back. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope this helps you if you're not sure what to play. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks.